So say, for example, if the husband is expected to give like 70% of the income and you work like part-time or 3/4 of the time, I'm not sure what your workload is, or maybe you give 60% of the income. That means other areas have to flex to kind of accommodate that, right? And so I think the important question that men have to ask when they're going into a relationship is going like, well, what am I offering and what are the type of women that I'm interested in looking for? And as a woman, you have to go, well, what am I willing to offer? And which men are interested in looking for those things, right? Because I would agree most like more conservative, super trad men, they're not as interested in like the woman's income. Most trad men are pretty open to being like 60 to 70% of the income. But what they look for in exchange would be like higher domestic labor. So like they do the income labor, woman does maybe higher domestic labor. If she's still working, it has to be back and forth.
I don't even think liberal men care about women's income.
Well, I would just disagree in the economy. Like the reality is very few men can provide for a family on one economy. Some men are like super blessed.
What
but
I'm
most
saying
are not.
is though, I understand the arguments of like, okay, economically speaking, you need a two-income household. That's just the economic reality for most couples. What I'm saying is that men, it's not going to make men more attracted to women. They'll do it out of economic necessity, but not like, oh, she's a high earner, I'm more attracted to her.
I agree.
It could be like a nice positive, for example, for a liberal guy, but I don't even think liberal men are going to be like, oh, she's more attractive because she's a high earner.
I agree. What I'm talking about is once you're in the relationship, these exchanges are going on. I think it's a disservice. So what happens when I listen to feminists and like man spheres fight with each other is women really ignore the income labor that men often do. They're just kind of like, it's like a self-assumed thing that men are bringing to the table. And then men will often ignore as well the economic labor that women are bringing in. And which is why I've listed multiple facets, because I agree, men aren't like looking at women who are making like $100,000 and being like, ooh, baby, right? They're being like, damn, she's hot. Right. And like she makes me feel good when I'm with her. That's more or less what most people are doing. But once you get into the relationship, part of the exchange, if we're all being honest with each other, has to be like, who's bringing the income, where and how much, and how do we balance out the other areas? And most people say the man should be bringing in higher income. And typically one of the partners is also doing higher emotional labor to like make the relationship work.
What is emotional labor?
It depends on the couple, right?
That?
So say, for example, you've got one partner that comes in with like a lot of emotional baggage.
Sure.
So I'm going to use I'll use a woman for an example first, because I think people would find them more appealing, and then I can use a man. For a woman, maybe she like had a messy childhood. So she's a little bit anxious. She's more depressed. So she needs to be comforted more often.
Or you could just not date her. That's also not.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking. We're talking about like what would be the emotional labor. In the case of a man having lots of baggage, he might have lots of anger issues.
Yeah.
He might kind of stonewall and not communicate, right? Sure. So then the woman might have higher emotional labor to make the relationship work, because you have to be able to talk to each other and emotionally relate to one another.
Jay, it sounds like you maybe wanted
to
comment.
Do you do the emotional baggage in y'all's relationship? I'm just curious. Like, are you the one that covers the emotional baggage?
I would say my husband is much more emotionally like solid than I am. I definitely like have a lot more baggage from my childhood.
I'm curious. I want to ask, if you don't mind, like, would you rather be in a situation where if you had an option of a dude who you liked and he made a lot of money, would you choose that if you had to be a homemaker versus your own career and out there like having to do your own thing and all that? Which would you prefer?
Naturally, I am very submissive, and I already do those things for fun. I like have fun cleaning and cooking, so it's something that but I don't look traditional, so it's.
But if you had a choice, which one would you prefer?
I would go with letting the man lead me and with the money, and I would take on the responsibility of cleaning and cooking for the home and having the baby.
So that would be a better life for you than like trying to fend for yourself in LA.
I have to admit it.
Okay. Yeah. What about you? Would you prefer that or not?
What, being like barefoot and pregnant and taken care of?
If the option of a guy who has a lot of money that you like, you genuinely are like, he's not a butthole, right? Or like you're a career woman doing your own thing and you have like a person that meets you halfway, which would you prefer?
Can I just use my relationship? Because that's obviously who I picked. When I got into the relationship, my husband hadn't graduated high school, didn't have a job. I was already high income earning and had the greatest income prospects. But for me, I learned pretty early to really prioritize like surface stuff. I really wanted a man of character. Like that was the most important thing to me, is a man of high integrity and character, which I would say I got. Like Nick's genuinely amazing person. So for me, but I'm not saying that that's the typical woman experience. Like I recognize that I was very career motivated. And so in my mind, I did a mental calculus of going, that means I need to scale back the money expectations because he's got to make a lot of trade-offs that aren't traditional for me. So I can't ask for the same traditional exchange. I did that when I was like 22. I just made that mental swap. But most women probably don't want to do that.
I wanted to ask, go back to you for a second.
Yeah.
You lean more traditional, more submissive, but your appearances might throw people off. So when it is when you are searching for a man, what else are you going to have to do you think to attract? Because you might attract the not that, right? I mean, is it fair to say you might attract not that?
Yes, it is fair to say that. But when I date, I kind of go off of the first approach, like how they treat me, and I don't really have a specific thing that I look for. I mean, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
It was like you lean more into traditionalism, submissive, so that it might be the case that the man you're actually looking for is actually traditional, but if your appearance
I have
can
standards.
throw people off, I was wondering, what do you do to find the traditional if the appearance might throw them off?
But I don't necessarily look for what a man can offer me. It's compatibility, like how does he make me feel? If he has all of that stuff, that's great, that's fine. But if it's a struggle together, that's what we have to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What would you choose?
Oh, like the barefoot and pregnant or
Well, it's not just barefoot and pregnant. It's
Yeah.
also the guy that you like who has stable income, good money, right? Versus like you're on your own trying to fend for yourself, and then you find a guy that meets you halfway or something like that.
Yeah, no, like 100%. I would rather be at home taking care of kids, doing my thing there. I do not want to work at all. That's not my thing.
What about you?
No, I like working for myself.
Okay.
I'd like us to have like both our separate careers, honestly. I don't know. I love my career so much, I would never give it up. So.